Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of I Am Christina DiArcangelo. And I am so very excited to have today's guest on, Jean-Claude. Jean-Claude, thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't you tell everyone, our viewers and listeners, about yourself?
Hi, so you can call me JC.
Okay.
Um, so I am a medical doctor and a neuroscientist, and right now I'm working a lot on cannabinoids. Um, and I am doing a study at the University of Malta at PhD level. And what we're studying is fibromyalgia, which is a condition affecting mostly women. Um, and I'm also based in Tel Aviv, where I'm part of a startup called Celotex. And I occupy the scientific area of the startup. And we do personalized plant medicine. We look into personalized plant medicine. Um, and that's me so far.
Thank you so much for introducing yourself. And, you know, as we always try to do on these shows, we always try to show that we are the same, right? That's like the whole gist about it. And so for our listeners and viewers, they now know the correlation between the two of us on why we're here today is to talk about more in depthly about medical cannabis and cannabinoids and endocannabinoid system, and maybe just touch on mental health a little bit and perhaps some of those areas where we think, based on some of the research that's been done, that's been presented, validated clinical study wise, not survey monkey questionnaires, actual clinical studies. I thought it would be really good for everyone to hear about some of the things that we know as we do research in this space. So how do you want to start it off? How would you like to start?
Really, we can touch base upon anything you like, anything to do with plant medicine. I'm really interested in. So cannabinoids, sometimes I think it doesn't do plant medicine justice to focus. There's a lot of research in cannabis right now, but there's so much about all the other plants. And what pushed me to get into cannabinoids in the first place was this idea that the solution to a lot of things that we're facing right now in medicine, in pharmacy, has been there for ages. You know, it's in our natural world and in the natural practices which we've had for thousands of years.
Well, and we discussed, before when we first came together, we had a follow-up discussion last week for another topic that we were talking about, more business related. We talked about how you and I agree on the stance of traditional pharma products, while they have been developed for certain therapeutic areas, they do not impact the endocannabinoid system for patients. So the patients never get their endocannabinoid systems fixed, so to speak, based on traditional pharma products. So when we're working in the cannabinoid space, we know that certain cannabinoids will help the various receptors, will help the endocannabinoid system heal. And it also goes to your gut all the way through, basically, right? And I think that's something important for us to discuss because I don't think that information is freely shared in the community, especially medical community, because a lot of times people just get stuck on taking traditional pharma products and not understanding that your endocannabinoid system is not being repaired at all. Nothing is helping it. It's just staying stagnant and actually maybe getting worse.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a problem that the endocannabinoid system really isn't part of the medical literature taught in the curricula in medical schools yet. So a lot of doctors end up struggling, even if they're willing, end up struggling to give advice to patients because this is something which is very obscure in the text, but it's all over the place in the body. So the endocannabinoid system is in the brain, is in the gut, and all the different systems. As you know, it keeps that balance, the concept of balance in the body, and keeps the body where it needs to be. And it's this concept of balance that medicine needs to start looking at more in general, but especially when we're talking about cannabis medicine and about cannabinoid medicine, we're looking at trying to fix or balance a system which is already endogenous. So we're playing with very delicate, I'd say, very delicate aspects of the human body and how it works and how it sends messages from one end of the body to the next. So I always try to keep this concept in mind in research and in the practice of cannabis medicine. You need to look at the patient. I know it's nowadays more and more we're hearing it as a buzzword, holistic medicine. But in cannabis, really, we have no choice. You need to look at the patient holistically because you're affecting several aspects of their life, several aspects of their body, the entire breakdown of the day, and the energy levels from how they break down the day. So it really leads to a whole practice of medicine, which is different to, like we started off, the traditional pharma sort of silver bullet way illnesses with a pill.
Yeah. So like what we mean by that to our listeners and viewers, so that way they understand where we're at, is that it's the mind, body, and soul approach when you're working in cannabinoids in the cannabis medicine space. So, some of the things that I've shared with the viewers and listeners having two autoimmune diseases. When I was diagnosed in 18 with those, I started my journey with cannabinoids, right? Because as a researcher, I had been researching a lot of this stuff. This was after I had gotten into the industry as a cannabinoid, clinical research person. I knew for myself, it wasn't just taking cannabis or cannabinoids, right? Or terpenes. It was regulating everything, right? What I was consuming, eating, how much exercise, how much sleep I was getting, how much stress, noise, all these things along with cannabinoids have to go together, because just like you said with the silver bullet, taking a pill from pharma and you think it's the end all be all, cannabis is not just the end all be all. There's a lot of things that you need to pay attention to as a patient and you need to think about. Otherwise, you're not going to get your best results, right? You're not going to be able to put your best foot forward just thinking, wow, I'll just take, people always ask me, how did you lose so much weight? You were much, heavier, they don't want to say larger, in 2018, when you started exploring this journey. And I'm like, well, it's not CBG and CBN only. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody's looking for the quick way out. And there is no quick way out when you are a sick person. You've got to think about it very methodically and work with a good team of people who can help you. Because even the mental health patients, we know that there's literature and studies out there that cannabinoids help in autism, PTS, depression, all these different various therapeutic areas. However, we have to be careful in that space, because if patients are taking antipsychotic meds and then they start consuming cannabinoids, there's going to be a conflict, right? So again, we've got to make sure that, when patients are being treated and they're going down this pathway, that they understand. Now, I'm not saying take your Klonopin and your Trazodone and your Effexor and all that stuff and throw it in the toilet and just go cold turkey. No, you can't do that either, right? Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes a pity when you see a lot of cannabis medicine and even cannabis medicine, which is being more and more on the surface nowadays, not so much underground. Even in Malta, my native country, we have medical cannabis legal since 2018. Recreational cannabis was legalized last year in 2021, but both in society and in the medical community, a sort of taboo towards cannabis medicine still prevails. Now, it's understandable to be conservative. It's understandable to want to ensure that there's best evidence first, but tabooing a growing aspect of care that patients are seeking, it backfires. You know, a lot of patients tell me, and I used to include this as a little questionnaire for my clinic patients, of how comfortable they feel to discuss their cannabis medicine and seeing me and what they're on in a hospital environment, say prior to surgery, or prior to any medical clinic. And a huge majority would say no, it would be something they wouldn't mention.
Mm-hmm.
And that backfires, right? Because if your internal med doctor is looking to prescribe something for you, he needs to check your meds, make sure there's no contraindications, and cannabis can interact with other medicines. Right. For surgery, it's so important. We know that cannabis can change the anesthetic requirements you need. So your anesthetist really needs to know not only if you're taking cannabis or not, but if you're under medical supervision, your dose, if you're taking CBD, THC, this is critical information for him prior to surgery. But there's a divide, a lack of connection between the doctors, the patients, and cannabis as a medicine. There's the taboo creates, or the gray area, it creates more problems.
Yep, the stigmatization of cannabis causes these issues. And I've got to tell you, you're in Malta, we're in the United States. Obviously, we've been legal, over here, not across the entire country, but state level, which I don't want to get involved in all that today. But because, you can't from a clinical research standpoint, if I'm doing a study with THC in it, Delta-9, in Pennsylvania, I can't move that product out of Pennsylvania unless I procure a DEA license to do so, which there's a lot of red tape, a lot of money, and it's just not many people have DEA licenses to move like that. And because we're state level, we all have different rules in the states, right? And then we have people who come out of state. Like, for example, I was at the dispensary about 3 weeks ago, re-upping my products. And I take a Rick Simpson oil and RSO at nighttime, and I take a tincture during the day. And obviously, I have my own transdermal patch through one of the other companies I take, which I'm being very careful because I don't want to seem like I'm making claims and get a 483 letter in the mail. So I don't need that. When I was there at the dispensary, somebody came in from, can't remember what state, Colorado or something. And they wanted to come into the dispensary. And they're like, but I have a card for Colorado or wherever they came from. And the dispensary personnel was like, but it's not recreational here. You can't use your card here because Pennsylvania is a medical state. Now, we are bordered by New Jersey, right? New York's not far, Delaware, DC, right? These are all close to us. They're all recreational states. We're medical. So there's all this confusion that goes on here in the United States because patients think, well, they can just show up to a dispensary because Pennsylvania, hey, is a cannabis state, but we are a medical state. And so, we're looking to fix that. There's a bill in front of the Senate. I just read an article this morning, and they're looking to fix it so that it's a little bit easier. And then the requirement to register, to get a card, to be able to have cannabis. But here in Pennsylvania, too, the doctors are not able to recommend products to the patient. How do you feel about that, JC? So the dispensary personnel, no offense to them, but They're not clinical researchers. They're not PhDs. They're not DOs. They're not MDs. They're none of that. They're telling the patients what they need to take because they're allowed to, because that's the way the entire program was written. I can say things because I'm a patient advocate, right? When I'm running under my nonprofit, but that doesn't make sense to me, right? Because if we want to seriously consider this as a medicine, and just to your point about contraindications and to what we were talking about earlier about SSRIs, this is a problem, right? So there's a lot of things going on that's not good for the patients. The patients have to stay informed.
Absolutely, and it's regulation. That's the biggest pity, that it's government regulation which is creating all
Red
this
tape.
confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Red tape. That's it. Because ultimately, patients, recreational users, they will find their path. You know, it's about enabling access to who needs it first. That's the
Right.
first thing you have to do, rather than channeling. And I'm not super well informed about the situation in the United States, but it's silly. I think that there can be such a zigzag of different rules in different states.
It's really hard, and I know as a patient, I'm not allowed to take my cannabis out of the state. So I'm traveling, in a couple of days out of state. I'm not allowed to take my medicine, and I can't get medicine in the state I'm going to because I'm going to a non-recreational state. So if I go to a recreational state, I can bring my card, just like we talked about the guy with Colorado, or wherever, I forget. He could bring that card to New Jersey or to New York or another state that's rec-based, recreational, and he can get us. When I go to California, I have no problems, right? That's kind of my home state anyway, because I used to live there. And I get my medicine when I'm there, so I don't worry. I don't have to hold my breath, right? But when I go to states where I don't have, that means I'm only allowed to take CBD 0.03% only of THC under the Farm Bill. I can move that down with me, but that's it. So I can't take my RSO that's got a whole bunch of Delta 9 in it, 86%. Can't take it. So,
Yeah.
and I'm a patient and I need this. This is my medicine. And so, I'm complaining, but imagine the states where it's not legal here in the United States. There are states that it's not legal. And imagine countries that aren't legal, right? And not being like Spain, right? They're still not legal. I went to Spain in 2018 and I was like, oh, what am I going to do? How am I going to sleep at night? How am I going to deal with this pain and this inflammation and the neuropathy and all these things that I suffer from? It's tough.
Yeah, it massive gaps. And also massive gaps for the patient and massive gaps for any kind of innovation, because research finds these hurdles everywhere. And if you're even in a university setting, it's very difficult to get the signatures you need on paper, even in legal aspects, because of the stigma surrounding it, because of the blocks and the barriers to access, which ultimately they trickle down to less innovative products for the patient, and I think it's another striking thing is that you find some territories around the world where they're very selective on the type of cannabis being allowed, so directing solely to flower. Whereas we know that patients sometimes would benefit more from other forms. You mentioned, Rick Simpson oil, and we know how precise and how specific you have to be with whether you're making a tincture or whether you're making something which is a patch. But the regulations in some territories will actually make you, no, we're going to give it to you as a basic flower.
Yep. Yeah. So like Pennsylvania, again, not to pick on my state, because I'm very blessed to be in the Commonwealth here. And I'm very, very happy to be able to get cannabis and be a medical patient. So I don't want people to think I'm complaining. But what I'm trying to explain is in Pennsylvania, they sell flower, but we're a non-smoke state. You're not supposed to smoke cannabis here, but we sell flower. So yes, you can do things with flower, right? But the point is, most people buy flower because they're going to smoke it, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't smoke, so I'm just going on what what I see. But isn't it kind of odd? Like, you know what I mean? To your point, you've got some countries and places where you only get flower. Then you have people who have flower but aren't supposed to smoke the flower. So then they got to figure out what to do with the flower. And a lot of these patients are elderly, right? And how do you explain to an elderly person how to make edibles from the flower and the whole process? It's a long process. I've done it before during COVID because, I mean, what were we going to do? We were in lockdown. And again, our governor allowed us to procure more cannabis than we were normally allowed to because in case they had to shut down then also the dispensaries because of COVID, we were able to have enough product, which was perfect. So I bought flower at that time because I thought, well, let me see if I can make edibles, right, out of this. Jesus, pardon me. It took me so long, and I'm a proficient, I kind of understand some things. It took me a long time to dry it all, then do everything, then to make the butter, and then to bake the stuff. And I'm like, who wants to go through all that just to have medicine? Who's going to do that? They're going to smoke it. Then they're not supposed to smoke it. Then a police officer smells it, and we can get popped for a possession charge here. Still in the Commonwealth, I can, even though I have a medical card, because it's considered a Schedule 1, even though it's state level approved. Feds supersede state. And a lot of patients don't understand that,
It's mixed messages, which is most worrying. It's mixed messages because ultimately a lot of people want to define the difference or make a line somewhere between what's medical, what's recreational. Ultimately, there's different aims, and it needs to be backed up with different education. So if you're a medical patient, you want to do what your doctor is telling you to do. You want exact doses. You definitely don't want to do anything bad for your health. Because you're at the doctor, you're here to, you go to a mechanic to fix your car.
Right. You listen to them.
you want to listen. So everything starting from the access to the products to the environment which it works into, to how integrated it is with the health system, it needs to reflect the fact that this is a medicine. Here, cannabis is speaking under the remit of a medicine.
Yes.
In recreational aspects, the aims are different. The aims are fun, responsible use.
Consumption, yeah.
So the aims should be to be safe at the sesh. So,
and I would argue, sorry, I have to make a point there because I don't want people to think we're bashing recreational. We're not. I would argue that recreational people are also medicinal because let's think about why they're taking that cannabis. They're saying because they want to have fun. Why are they trying to take it to have fun? Because they may be stressed out. They may have massive anxiety. They may be bipolar. They may be something else, right? And that calms them down. Again, it's not just meant to be a party drug. This is not what that's for, even in the recreational space.
Absolutely. And when you think about how cannabis, people will say, well, I take cannabis to socialize, it makes me calm down. So if there's some social anxiety brewing there, we've medicalized it, we've ruined it, but yeah, it's something which I really believe in. I think deep down, a lot of recreational use is medical use, and I think we have to also look at the definition of recreation. When we say recreation, what do we mean? And it's to rest. Now whether that rest is social activity, whether that rest is being introspective and meditation. This is what recreation is all about. So cannabis allows you to
be free. It frees your mind.
Right.
It frees your, because we were talking about this last week too. Like, we were being very philosophical when we were talking about cannabis and about how when a lot of times when you consume cannabis and you're able to free your mind from all the thoughts that you have, all the million rat race thoughts you have. You think about this, that, 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 that. It's like a squirrel, outside, like here, there. That's how my
Yeah.
brain is. So for me, I need to slow it down so that I can get to a point where I can meditate and see things that are going to help me feel better, And that's one of the purposes and one of the reasons why I am a cannabis patient, besides all the other stuff I already said, was because my brain never stops running. And at nighttime, I can't slow myself down to go to sleep. Sometimes I even fight the cannabis. Like last night, I fought it and I only got 5 hours of sleep, 2 hours of deep sleep, 3 hours of light. That's not enough sleep for me. But it is what it is. I got to start the day, and I hope to go to bed early tonight and hopefully sleep through, which now I'm paying attention to that, because does it mean that the hybrid I'm taking is not working for me now because I had a tolerance built up? So like, see, that's the other thing that we could go on and on about this stuff, but like that's the issues with this cannabis, is that there's not enough information. And then even when it's legal, you have the naysayers. You guys have naysayers in Malta. You have people who talk against cannabis, who talk about it openly on public TV, saying all these crazy things about people because they're taking cannabis or they want to take cannabis. And it's not true. It happens over here in the United States. We still have people. I know when I got in this space, 7 years ago, when I moved in from traditional pharma, I got blowback from traditional pharma people thinking I'm some drug person now. What? No, I'm a researcher. I see the benefits of cannabis. This is before I was a patient. So there's still a lot of that stigma that's going on, which we started talking about. But I just want to bring that up one more time in the forefront, because I know it's something that you guys struggle with in Malta, just like we struggle with here in the United States.
No, we definitely do, and it's ultimately it's to the detriment of everyone,
Society.
It's the detriment of society, and sometimes you really don't. It's not something that you can have an honest debate about. I shared a quote on LinkedIn this morning
Yes.
about and it goes I forgot exactly how it goes, but basically it's how it seems to bring out the worst. The topic cannabis was always spoken about as a taboo, but it's amazing how it can bring out the worst in people who don't agree with it, because it seems to come from a lot of pre-misconceptions. It seems to come a lot from looking at cannabis and looking at a lot of us and them issues of seeing cannabis as something done by people who aren't are criminals,
Yeah. Black market stuff. Yeah, it's
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely, there's a lot of that.
even my little boy, right? Now he's going to be 10 on Friday. And, I have a Cannabot, which is an AI bot. And when I developed Cannabot, that was back in 18 with a team of people, right? So Christian loved seeing what, the logo of the Cannabot, because it's a little robot. He has a heart. I designed this with the graphics team and everything to make him look accepting, loving, caring, because that's what the bot's supposed to do. It's supposed to provide education and support the patients. So Christian was so excited to go to school. Now imagine, this is 2018, we're in 2023 now, right? It's it's a little bit better now here in the Commonwealth than when back then, but still taboo. And I said, Christian, please don't go to school and talk about the cannabis because you're in I live in an area where it's kind of affluent, and he goes to an affluent school. And I'm afraid that he'll be picked on because he's talking about the Cannabot, which is a tool to help patients that take cannabis. It's not a drug dealing tool. It's not anything illegal. It's a helpful tool that helps patients feel better. That's why we developed it. I have a brother bot called the Doctor Bot. They're the same. They're friends. They're family. Yep. So, I'm like, Christian, talk about Doctor Bot instead. And then it wasn't flowing for him as well off of his mouth to say Dr. Bot. Cannabot was easier. And I'm like, oh my God, please be careful, because I don't, because he's
It's
exposed, they
very
could call
it's
the
very valid.
authorities.
It's very valid. It's something
Right.
which you're gonna get picked on, which you're gonna get, you're gonna get shamed for. Just this week, I was invited to give my opinions on, I'm always invited to be talking about cannabis and give my little lecture on the endocannabinoid system. And I had one of the members on the panel who is in the Medical Association of Malta. So this is someone who sits on a very, a very high,
Elevated. Mm-hmm.
elevated board. Threatening to write to the medical council to take away my warrant, saying that kids and families shouldn't be hearing these things, and I'm like, I'm educating on a system that people don't know about, that they should, because they have it.
Right.
You have it.
Right. We
So
all have it. That was one of
it's
the
not.
reasons why I wanted to talk about the endocannabinoid system, because obviously now that we're connected, I watch very closely, what's going on. And I've been watching what's going on with Malta and all the other countries because I'm in the space and I need to be able to do my research effectively. So I've got to understand what you guys do versus what Israel does versus what, another country, India, all these different countries. I've got to understand all this stuff. So when I have seen some of the things that have happened, and I've been watching your posts very closely because I respect you and what you're doing and the work you're doing, I wanted to make sure that we talked about this today because I don't think, hopefully, people who have those misconceptions about what cannabis does, maybe we could sway them to a more positive view on things. But also, I want patients to understand there's people like us out there, you and me, that are out there trying to fight for them, to fight for their rights, to make sure we continue to do research. We're not saying, well, let's just stop all the research. Let's not invest in it anymore. We already know it works. We have some papers out there. No, we're going to continue to do the research, right? But the point of the matter is we already have research out there. We already have proof that's not anecdotal, right? I'm working on that DN study right now, which is the first head-to-head. I don't know. Somebody come out of the woodwork and tell me otherwise. First head-to-head ever against Big Pharma with cannabinoids. Nobody else is doing it. You know why? People are afraid. They're afraid of Big Pharma. They're afraid of stigma. They're afraid of the politicians. Like your situation. Oh, well, we're just going to take away your ability to practice. I'm sorry. You have not committed any illegal activities. You have not caused any malpractice issues. You've not killed anybody. So why do you think you have the right to take my license away to practice?
Yeah, I think that what I took most from the experience is how we really need to tell the people out there that this is to be expected, but we're still gonna keep on doing it, and we do.
That's right.
We do. I feel that in the research space, and since I started working in the cannabis space, I've met so many amazing people, and you think you get so much. You get so much stuff thrown at your face. I was gonna say something else, but
Yeah, that's okay. You can curse.
You start thinking, why are these people here? You could be in a career which is less controversial. You get less hassle with your papers and your daily work. And I noticed how many amazing people work in the cannabis space and cannabis research in the medical space and the recreational spaces. And people have to fight the law. People have to fight this kind of bullying, and they do it because they believe in it. And they believe in it. They believe in the patients. They believe the patients when they come back and tell us, listen, this works.
Mm-hmm.
This is working for me. This is changing my life. The countless stories I've seen, my patients coming back and saying this cured pains, which no other pharmaceutical drug did. This helped me like nothing else did.
Oh, yeah, the pain. I mean, really, come on now. Look what we have. Look what we have out there for pain still. People are still getting OxyContin. They're still prescribing OxyContin. And I am talking from the first person point of view, not because it was in the news. My own mother was prescribed OxyContin in November of last year. This was prior to her death because she had broken her tailbone and she had severe mental health issues and had taken a lot. That's why I could just list out all these mental health drugs because my mom was on all of these things. And we couldn't get her stabilized mental health wise to be able to traction in potentially cannabinoids because it would have been unsafe for her. So then she's taking oxy and gets addicted to it again. After the doctors knew she shouldn't have been taking it because it was in her chart that she was addicted to it because it helped her escape her mind. It's still happening. It's still happening. And it's 2023. So I agree with you, JC. When you brought up the pain, I'm sorry, I jumped up because it's true. How many more people need to die from opiate abuse or other things that they do because the pain is so bad that they kill themselves because they can't take it anymore? That's not fair when we have something out there that can help them.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's the same across so many different medications. In Malta, you'd find so many elderly people on benzodiazepines when we know the risks of benzodiazepines in the geriatric population, specifically because the cocktail of medicines they're on. But still, it's the
organ failure
every time. It's
kidneys,
the
livers.
every time. You go with a sleep problem to a doctor, and they will recommend the benzodiazepine because it's with the tradition. It's inbuilt, and it doesn't make sense, and it's not right.
They're using gabapentin. Okay, so imagine this. You're taking a bunch of SSRIs for your mental health. Then you're also given gabapentin for your pain and neuropathy. And you're also taking oxy. Why isn't anybody paying attention to all this going on? This is in one person's body. No one is paying attention. This is why we developed spectral telemonitoring. It's because nobody's paying attention. Nobody's talking to these elderly people to try to figure out what's the core problem. JC, you talk to your patients to figure out what's going on with them so that you can ease into it with them and go, okay, let's talk about this. I know this from talking to you. I know you do this. Not everybody does this. Dr. Donner, who you've seen on my show before, that's how Donner is. I love Dr. Donner because he listens. It's head and heart. That's how he works. Obviously, science and medical first, but head and heart next. He helps his patients feel better. And he's a traditional doc who went into cannabis when the program opened. So it can be done. We've got to stop stigmatizing and putting people down. And like you said, bullying, because now we're taking gross profit margins out of people's pockets because we found something else that is cheaper, that works maybe better, and doesn't have as many side effects. Your kidneys aren't shot to hell if you're taking cannabis. I haven't seen any reports about that. Have you seen anything about liver tox issues? I haven't seen anything, but I'll tell you what, you continue on this other track that you're on, you're going to have those problems.
It's something which I hope the next generations will look at, and I believe plant medicine and the time of plant medicine is coming. It's very promising, and
it is.
We're right now. I believe everything in life has the early pioneers and goes through the logarithmic stage, and then plateaus, becomes more common. And I think this is one of those things. I think right now the work is pioneering, and you can be called a quack and other things, and but we're doing the research, we're continuing, and this is the positive message when we when we talk about the messages to youngsters and what kind of messages we should be saying to youngsters. I think the message should be to not give up in the face of bullying, not give up in the face of following your passion and being human in medicine. Yes, being human in medicine, in research, in science. There, you can still be human. You should still be, the human element is here to stay.
That's right.
Always.
That's right. And also to swing into the positive aspect, part is that if there's patients out there that need help, there's people like us that can help them. You, me, others, right? I mean, listen, Meshulam was the beginning of all this, right? We can't forget it. You're in Israel right now, in the home space, okay? And we can't forget everything that he's done for us before you and I got into this space, right? And he has worked really hard, and he's proven a lot of things. And that's our jobs too, is to continue educating and providing a path that's safe for patients, also safe for them to feel heard and listened to. And so I think, one of our lessons today, hopefully everybody's getting out of this, is that they should question things, they should speak up and be transparent. If you're consuming cannabis, you should let your health professionals know, just like JC said with the, if you're getting surgery, it's especially important, or anything else that you're doing, you need to be honest and transparent. When I go to Penn, University of Penn, that's where my general practitioners are. I go to the medical division. I will certainly tell them when I go in for my, my yearly visits, because you have to do it for the insurance and everything and to check in. They always go, "Oh, you seem to be doing so well, wow, we've done some things here." And I said, "Not you. This is because the fact that I have access to cannabinoids and the fact that I've changed all these things, my diet, my train of thought, meditation, everything, right? Everything I've changed by myself with a team of people that aren't you, other people. So yes, I'm better, but it's because I had to go outside of Penn. And Penn, by the way, is one of the participating universities in our program to do clinical research in cannabinoids. You would think, right, JC, this just goes back to the stigma. You would think they'd be the first one to go, "Hey, let's talk about, do you have a medical card?" They can't make recommendations, right? But they could recommend that you look into it. Surely they could, especially since they're participating in research. They're quick to prescribe you to a traditional pharma product. But what about this?
Absolutely.
Right?
It's something that we're seeing all around us. But like I said before, I really think the time of plant medicine is coming, and it's not just the plant medicine, it's the plant healthcare. It is that part of healthcare which me and you are doing. There are other great people doing this, and it's really what patients should come to expect.
Yep.
And how they should judge, like you said. People need to start asking questions, not just assuming that the doctor, whatever they say, is a religion. In Malta, sometimes we still see that a lot, especially. But patients need to say, "Listen, is this the best healthcare that is available to me right now? Do I have other options?" Everyone has the right to know and have informed consent about that healthcare. Everyone who has the capacity should be given all the options. And if they're not, they really should be looking around and seeing what is really making sense. And especially when you think today, with research is easy for everyone. There's we talk about ChatGPT and we talk about Google and
Google.
the access to information it's larger than ever. So patients nowadays, they can use these systems, and they can use them for their own health, for the health of their loved ones,
to empower themselves.
Exactly. And the patient can be empowered. And this is what pharmaceutical companies, nutraceutical companies of tomorrow need to look at. They need to look at empowering patients and giving them the power, not necessarily giving them the plants are the plants. They're there. They've always been there, maybe, even though we ignored them and destroyed them for most of our time on the earth. But they're there. And what the pharmaceutical companies of tomorrow need to do, they need to empower patients to use them and use them wisely.
Right. And also to design the protocols based on the true therapeutic area, understanding where these patients are coming from, not just your primary, your first endpoint, not your major endpoint. We've got to also look at your secondary endpoints as well when we're designing these protocols. So we're capturing those pieces of data so that we can support those underlying issues that these patients have, instead of then having to take another drug to help their anxiety or whatever it is that's happening based on that therapeutic area, right? If we can look, like I pick on DN all the time because I've been engrossed in the diabetic neuropathy study now for over a year. And we know the diabetic neuropathy patients, a lot of them have anxiety. They don't sleep because of the pain. They have pain, right? They either gain weight or lose weight because they can't eat because they're in pain, gain weight because they're depressed and they're eating. So there's a lot of things that when we look at this stuff, we look at it, like you said earlier, holistically. That's what we
Absolutely.
do. So
It's part of a whole puzzle. Patients come as patients. They come as people. They're not just a cancer. They're not just a tumor.
right.
They're not tumor size. These endpoints were endpoints which looked at healthcare in a totally different way. Now we're talking about patient-centered care. So we need to look at rethinking what we thought we know about randomized clinical trials, about endpoints, about how endpoints need to be. It can't be one-to-one. It was always, fair testing. You test one thing, the tumor, and you test another thing, the size. No. One endpoint is multiple. It's many to many. It's a person with many problems, and it's a plant with many applications. We need to rethink the gold standard. We need to change it and update it.
I completely agree with you. And with that, we're getting close to the end here. We went a little bit over, but listen, we were having an amazing conversation. I just couldn't stop myself. I couldn't. And this is a new year, and we're in February here. So if we can impact people now, and help them, maybe their year would be better. I'm not trying to be stupid, but you know what I'm saying? Like, we're trying to help people. And this is the best time, I feel, to have had this discussion, because it's the new year and a lot of people are still goal setting and watching what they've set up, in the beginning of the year. This may be something that they want to explore, further. And there's ways to get a hold of us. After the podcast, we always link in everything. So if somebody wants to talk to you, JC, they'll have that opportunity. If they want to get in touch with me, find me too. But I think it's important that we share these messages with all the patients out there and the medical professionals that might think otherwise. Maybe they'll start to consider cannabis.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important to keep an open mind and keep a very positive mind. I think positivity, like we said, it's not just the medicine, it's a lot of other things. And I think positivity is always one of nature's best medicines. And knowing that as time goes by, things do work out. The answers do. They do come. And ultimately, patients who have been suffering for years, even people who have been suffering for years, this can be their year to discover plant medicine, maybe cannabis, maybe others, and have a positive change in their lives. And that is something that I hope as many people can benefit from, maybe from listening to us, and maybe from finding something, maybe a health professional who can help them better this year.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so very much for being on with me today, JC. I know it's later in the day over there for you, so I really, really appreciate you being on with me tonight and for sharing, pieces of your journey and some of the things that keep you up at night as a physician, who's trying to help people. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here.
Oh, of course. So as we always say, remember, we are the same. I am Christina DiArcangelo. Thank you.